Did we get it? Did it load? There we go. Hey there, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be where you are out there. Welcome back to the live stream. My name is Fritz, and this is another episode of Learn C# with CSharpFritz. This is a live stream, and if you're watching the recording, this is an archive of a live stream where we're going to take your questions, we're going to talk about, we're going to learn various technical topics together, and today's one of my favorites, and I've got the hat to match, right? I make custom hats for various logos and things that I'm interested in. So I downloaded the Blazor logo from the dotnet swag repository out there on GitHub. Had to make a Blazor hat. I love my ball caps, and having a baseball cap with the Blazor logo on it, as we're getting ready to start talking about Blazor today. That's going to be our topic. That's where we're going to go. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, if you don't know what Blazor is, we're going to get you started at the ground level. We're going to make sure that we talk about this and we get you the answers you need to be productive. We're going to have a good 4 to 6 episodes in this series talking about Blazor, getting you productive, building a web application with this new framework available from the .NET team. So we're really excited about the framework, about what you can do with it, and I hope you're interested in it as well. I see a bunch of folks already here over on YouTube and on Twitch. Good morning. It is so good to see you. Ahmed is here. I'm going to come back to Ahmed's question in just a minute here. Gaurav, hello to you. Moises is here from Sao Paulo. Ahmed is here from London. You're very welcome. I'm happy to host and share a little bit of discussion here. How's it going? Murad in Algeria. Lorenzo in Argentina is here. Is that Iwan from Cameroon? Hello. Wagner is here from Brazil. Is it Wagner or Wagner? Visual Academy from Korea is here. Bruce Wilhite, hello. Good to see you. Gaurav, yeah, we're going to get into that in just a little bit. Chris Jones, and Delano are here on Twitch. Mabo, is it Maboster from South Africa? Hello. Tinker Fu is here on Twitch as well as hello Subworld. Good to see you from Switzerland and London respectively. Ivan is here from Russia. Daniel from Essex. Good to see you. Charles Goluli's on Twitch. I didn't even put up the thing over here. Let's do that. There it is. So you can see the chat room is here. And we do a little bit of AMA discussion here for the first 40 minutes. So we have the timer there to keep us on track. Make sure we don't go too far off topic. How you doing there, Tomas in Prague? You're very welcome for the course. Vortex, how you doing? RVA, good morning. How you doing? Binbers in Austria. I'm going to back up and go to that first question from Ahmad that we got right at the top of the stream, and then we'll go into some more of the greetings. Ahmed was asking about .NET MAUI. .NET MAUI is the new framework from the .NET team that allows you to build native applications for Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. It's the next evolution of the Xamarin platform of tools and technologies. I don't like to teach topics that aren't quite released yet. So when we do have .NET MAUI released, we will absolutely have a series of streams talking about walking through and getting folks up to speed on it. And the reason for that is quite simple. I don't want to teach something that could change between now and when the release happens. This content is archived. Folks refer to it, find my demos and the walkthroughs later. And I want to make sure that they're at least covering something that was supported at one time. So that's where we're going to jump off at. Gaurav asks, what makes Blazor unique from React? So when we talk about Blazor and React is a JavaScript framework built and maintained by the folks at Facebook. There's a number of open source contributions, but it's all JavaScript, front to back, top to bottom. Blazor is all C# and .NET. So if you're already a .NET developer, you're going to feel very comfortable building and working with that. Additionally, since Blazor is built and maintained by the .NET team, by the Microsoft teams, you're going to get great support and tooling in Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, and the other .NET IDEs that are out there, because it is another .NET framework. Microsoft is very much a developer tools company. These other companies in the FANG conglomerate, the FANG collection there, right? Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google, they're not developer companies. They haven't been building developer tools. Their products are other things. Microsoft makes and sells developer tools. So you're going to get the best of support and features to drive and make sure that you can build with Blazor. That's the difference that you see between Blazor and React. Let me keep scrolling through the greetings here. Let me see. Daniel Case is in Essex. I said Tomas. Let me keep scrolling. Zulius, how you doing there in Germany? Good afternoon. Yeah, I got the Blazor hat on. Fahim Rashid, how you doing there on Twitch? Good to see you. I'm doing well this morning. How you doing, John, over on YouTube? Yep, Blazor lets you write front end in C#. We're going to see a little bit of that today. Gransham, how you doing there in London? Madinger, hello. Vortex, did I do a series on Xamarin? I did not. I got caught between, do I want to do Xamarin? Do I want to do .NET MAUI? And we never got to Xamarin in the previous series of content because I was holding out for .NET MAUI and it didn't happen. So, Jemeni, how you doing there in Moscow? How you doing? Craig in Redditch, England. Is it Kira Panathan in Madurai? How you doing there? Kwychak in Poland. Hello, hello. Oh my goodness, so many folks today. Jung-uk Kim in Korea. How you doing? Keep looking here. You have nerves? Oh no. Would I choose to use Blazor WebAssembly or Blazor Server? Asks Hello Subworld. Depends. We'll talk a little bit about why you would choose each here today. Sean on YouTube asks, was there a change to where we can serve up WebAssembly stuff in the latest version? Thought I heard something on that. No change into where you can serve it up. The enhancements that were brought to the WebAssembly framework include the ability to pre-compile so that you have ahead of time compiled content that's delivered and running in the browser. We'll talk more about that. Yeah, Carl's right. Microsoft tools work, and they do work well. So, how you doing there? Yizhuan Wang, the Blazor's .NET code will eventually be translated into JavaScript. No. It runs on top of the WebAssembly runtime in the browser if you choose to work with WebAssembly. So, how you doing, Sean, in Fort Knox, Kentucky? Oh, my goodness. I need to make my way back to Kentucky at some point. It's been too long since I've been there. Abdenor says Blazor is the best. I might be a little biased on that. I do enjoy Blazor, but it is only 2 or 3 years old in release to manufacturing, release to many. Absolutely, with new technologies, tinker, try things out, figure out what works best for you. I'm not going to come out here and say everybody should build with Blazor. Give it a try. Take a look at what it's about. See if it fits your working model. If you've already got applications out there that are built with JavaScript, that are built with React or Angular or Vue, and they meet your needs, that's great. Keep building with them. Keep managing them. You can do amazing things with ASP.NET. We learned about minimal APIs to enhance and make those applications run really fast. Do it. If that's what works for you and your organization, that's awesome. And I want to make sure that you know that. But if you want to try building so that you have .NET front to back, top to bottom, throughout the stack, like a lot of JavaScript developers do, who went and embraced Node, we've got you covered with Blazor. Can Blazor work with MVC and other frameworks? Asks Gansham. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. Absolutely. There are all kinds of integration points, and not today, but either next week or the week after, we're going to talk about interop. From JavaScript calling into .NET code, and from .NET code calling JavaScript. And I'm not talking about just emitting some code that eventually gets executed by the browser. No. executing and waiting for a callback and proceeding. Whether you're calling code from JavaScript into .NET or from .NET into JavaScript, you can wait for that code to conclude and then, and then myself, and then continue processing in whatever language you started with. So, really good stuff. You never want to leave. Oh, thank you, Carl. That's very nice. Andy Walter, hello, good to see you. Bambang from Java, Indonesia, welcome. Hello. Any possibility to run WebXR Babylon JS with Blazor? I haven't tried it. I haven't tried that. It's got to be possible, but why? If you're doing WebXR, you're doing mixed reality things. I would think you'd want to be in Unity at that point. I think Unity is going to give you a better tool set for building things with WebXR and delivering into the browser if you want to do WebAssembly. That would be the direction I would lean with those tools right now, is into Unity to work there. So, Andy asks, can somebody show how to use SQLite in WebAssembly? Why do you need SQLite in WebAssembly? Steve Sanderson has a fantastic demo from .NET Conf 2021. You can browse to that on YouTube and watch the video. He shows how he integrated it. He's got a link in that video to his demo code that you can go and download. Steve showed that, and now a lot of folks are saying, I need SQLite running in the browser. Why? What is it you're trying to accomplish? Because I feel like folks jump right into, I need a full database running in the browser, where you can get away with using application storage, session storage, to store things in the browser and interact with them either from JavaScript or from your .NET code and still get that same fetch and storage information from there. So, how does Harf Buzz Sharp work in WASM? I don't know what that is. I'm sorry, Madiner, I'm not familiar with that. Harf Buzz Sharp, I'm not familiar with that. How you doing, Guillermo in Spain? Hello. Can't wait to check Blazor out. Yeah, we're going to have fun with that. Lycan1534 says, good day. Hello. Good day to you. Abdinar, just a few days. You've built one project. Terrific. We'll get into this. Guillermo asks for a professional opinion. Hang on. Let me get my professional stance on here. All right, let me read Guillermo's message. Which unit test framework do I prefer? XUnit, MS Test, NUnit. I'm an XUnit person. And XUnit jumped on .NET Core when it was initially being released, and adapted and fits in very nicely with a lot of my workflow. Additionally, I'm friends with a couple of the XUnit maintainers, so for me to share feedback with them and see changes go into the framework, really happy with that. The XUnit maintainers also stream on YouTube every now and again, showing how they're working on the framework. It's a nice set of tools, and it's got a good collection that works across all of the .NET frameworks. How you doing there, Ashish in India? Robert is here. Do I have a favorite Blazor UI component library? I once upon a time I worked for Telerik, now Progress Software. I've seen a bunch of the different UI libraries that are out there, whether they're free and open source. Chris Sainty makes some really cool controls, but I wouldn't say they're a library, a complete library that you can work with. But I'm so used to thinking and working with components the way that the Progress Blazor components work, that really fits the way that I think about tools. That said, there are really great components out there from DevExpress, Infragistics, Component One, Grape City, Sync Fusion. Check them out. They're really great. They all offer free trials. You can download and try them side by side. But for right now, for the way that I think and approach projects, the Progress tools are the ones that I lean into a little bit. But make sure you check them out. Check them all out. They all offer similar functionality and behave just slightly differently. They all offer free downloads and trials. Check them out and figure out the one that fits the way you think and the way that you work with projects best. Okay? And some of them will innovate and come up with a new component over here, and 6 months, 9 months later, the others will have that component as well. So if there's one library that has a component you really need, go after that one. So let me see here. Do I have Andy Walter says for performance what? I'm sorry, I missed context now. Do I know if I can run a Unity project in Blazor WebAssembly? It doesn't run in Blazor, it runs in WebAssembly. RVA on Twitch says, my company has a very mature .NET Framework 4.7.2 ASP.NET app. Part of me wants to migrate this to .NET Core, change the pages into components. It seems daunting. Depending on the size of it, it absolutely could be daunting. My recommendation for folks that want to migrate from .NET Framework to ASP.NET Core to .NET 6 is refactor those applications so that you put your business logic as much as possible into class libraries, .NET standard class libraries. That means that that class library can be referenced both by a .NET Framework app and by a .NET 6 app. What does that mean then? That means that your application, your ASP.NET 4.7.2 application, like RVA has here, is referencing in all of the business logic, all the important decision-making code for interacting with the database, algorithms, are all sitting in a library that you can lift and reuse when you get to Blazor or ASP.NET Core. That said, then, you're at that point only migrating your user interface and all of your code, your business logic code, your intellectual property works in both environments, and that should allow you to migrate while you're still maintaining that ASP.NET app. Get that code pushed out into a library that you can still continue to reference, and then I invented myself again. You can start rebuilding that user interface in ASP.NET Core, so you can get stuff pushed over there. So, let me see here. Hello Subworld asks, when using WebAssembly, can you be safe with API keys when using external APIs? No, you can't. And here's why. Because just like with JavaScript, folks, whether you're using Angular, Vue, React, take your pick, when you put an API key down in the browser, everybody can see it. It's being sent to the browser. It's clear. So everybody always sees it. So my recommendation is, don't put it in the browser. Put it on a server somewhere that you relay through so that your connections into third-party services happen on your server, and you can protect there whether folks are allowed to see it and relay and get out to those other services. Mike is here. How you doing? Mike Brocky. How you doing? Asks, can I talk about the bundle size of Blazor apps? So Blazor applications, if you build for WebAssembly, can be anywhere between 1.5 meg, 2 meg, depending on how much content you put in there. You might even get it out to 3-4 meg. That said, the applications that you're watching this browser-based live stream on right now, they deliver more than 2 meg of JavaScript and CSS and programmable content just to deliver this video that you're watching. So, yeah, it's a big size for an application just for Hello World and to get started. However, when you do start adding things to it, you don't add significant size because it all gets compiled down, tree shaken, and you only send out those things that you need to run your application. So, just like folks in JavaScript frameworks end up writing code to do a bunch of linking and tree shaking to make sure that it all fits and they don't ship anything that they don't need, you're going to be in good shape as well. BUnit is pretty cool. That is a good unit test framework as well. Hey, how you doing there, Boris? Boris on YouTube asks, and questions are backing up here, so I'm going to start to shorten my responses. A few months ago, I started working as a .NET developer. Can I, in a few points, describe absolute fundamentals needed before jumping into Blazor? Sure. When working with Blazor, I assume you have some background knowledge of HTML. I assume that you know that how the browser works a little bit, that there is a document object model that you're going to be interacting with, you're going to be putting things into and maintaining. With Blazor WebAssembly, all the code is sent down to the server and to the browser, and you may be making HTTP requests back to the server to get data. So that's where I would start. We're going to get a little bit further there today. Is Mud Blazor a free component? Yeah, I believe so. So are the Radzen controls, James Foreman. Yes. You prefer to create your own components? To each their own. If that works for you, fantastic. SyncFusion has some amazing tools available for free. Cool. That's awesome. How you doing there, Snedix? Will I explain WebAssembly a bit today? Yeah, we can talk a little bit about that. Absolutely. Games Brown keeps hearing about Blazor just moved to .NET 6 with Angular. We'll show you the nickel tour here. We're going to get into the code in about 20 minutes over here. You even did .NET 4.7.2 VBNet web WinForms to Blazor. That was a lot of fun. Very cool one line. Yeah, it's not trivial to do, but when you refactor into a well-structured application with business logic sitting in component libraries and your user interface framework application doing just user interface management, you're going to have an easier time migrating. And that goes whether you're migrating from .NET 4.7.2 to Blazor, to ASP.NET Core, to a JavaScript framework. If you've refactored your code properly and you've maintained it, you're going to be able to swap out front-end technologies easier than if you didn't. I'm not going to say easily, but easier than if you didn't. Can Blazor be integrated into an existing app? Yes. That's not easy to do as well. Possible, but not easy to do. What am I thinking about using Blazor and Rust for API? Why? Why Rust for an API? Why not .NET? You're already in .NET. You're already programming with C#. Why not? C# is the fastest, and ASP.NET Core is the fastest web server that you can run. So why Rust? Is there just a skill set there? You have the .NET skill set, so why Rust? I mean, sure, that certainly will work for you, but why not keep it the same the whole way through? And the benchmarks show that .NET is faster on the API. James Foreman says, so I'm saying don't pass API keys in the request. Have them set as environment variables on the server. Or other places, in some sort of a key vault on the server, works as well. James, yes. The point is, you don't want them residing somewhere where the bad folks can get to it. Where those folks that want to break in and get to your data, you don't want to see them get access. Javier asks, when is Maui going to be public? Don't know. Can't answer it. Can't answer that question. I don't work on the Maui product specifically, but I believe they just released another preview last week or the week before. So, can Blazor Server have progressive web apps? Asks Tahat4TT. No. Blazor Server needs a persistent connection to the server. We'll see that model in a little bit here when I get into the code. Progressive web app means that you're going to deliver and run all of your code as much as possible in the browser, on the client machine, which means you need to deliver your entire application, so you need Blazor WebAssembly. Blazor Server, you're not going to see that. Should I learn how to use Razor View before learning Blazor? Asks Kyung Lee. How you doing there? Razor is not that hard to learn. If you know HTML, you pretty well know Razor, and we'll go through a bit of that here. But you should know Razor in order to build efficiently with Blazor. And it's something that you can pick up. If you know HTML, you can pick it up in minutes. It's pretty easy to do. And reference for Razor is very clear and easy to look up. That's right. The timer still until we head over to the set and get into get into our code. I'm going to start playing some music here in the background before I finish and get into the rest of our content. Nah, don't start with that song. This is Stream Beats, and we're going to play the Synthwave playlist today. This is some groovy music that I'm just going to have in the background for us to listen to while we're writing code together. This is called Reverse the Geometry. There we go. This is music that's DMCA-free, royalty-free. You can listen to it wherever you'd like. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, doesn't matter. You can download the music. There's all kinds of genres out there that are kind of groovy and fun to listen to. They've got playlists for Apple Music, Amazon Music, and Spotify, like I'm listening to here today. Thank you so much to Harris Heller for making this music available for us to listen to together today. Why is your message being stopped for no reason? No, it's... why is NuGet packages being blocked? That should be allowed. How you doing there, PC nerd? When will we have a Blazor dev tool for the browser? Like what, Moti? What do you mean a Blazor dev tool for the browser? Help me out. What do you mean? You can run Visual Studio Code in the browser, go out to GitHub, hit the period key on your keyboard, and it will open your Blazor app in the browser. You can edit it right there. So what more are you looking at there? Smoothly slid the answer to that in another... Yes. Steve Sanderson created a custom element component of a Blazor project in his React project. How did he link them? Take a look at the samples over there. All of his videos have links to his demo code. Will Blazor WebAssembly that runs on client side be able to interact with machine hardware? Yes and no. If it's in the same sandbox that your JavaScript code would be protected in. So you may need to install some sort of tool on that machine so that you can connect to and interact with that hardware. Folks have had some pretty good success building with that. There are ways to interact with Bluetooth going through there. Our friend Jimmy Engstrom has done a number of presentations about using Blazor to connect to Bluetooth hardware that way. Can Blazor be used for showing videos? Asks Andy Walter. Why, yes, it can. Yeah, for some reason the term NuGet gets modded, so I don't know why that is. Blazor is easy. I believe so. Yes. Who made the background circuit animation? Janius Gaming is his name. You can find link to his information over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/CSharpFritz, and there's links out to his work if you're interested in learning and seeing more. Why .NET Core is 100 times faster than .NET Framework? Because it was rewritten from scratch to be faster and to not be limited by the constraints of Windows shipping cycles. It was designed and built specifically so that the .NET team could iterate on it quickly and provide better performance, where when we deliver things that work with Windows, there are constraints that we must ship and support Windows with the same APIs, the same features, and the same capabilities. This is something common and standard you see when Microsoft integrates tools between two or more products. So we wanted to break out of that and make something that works across everything and allows everybody to iterate faster. So that's why .NET Core and now .NET 6 is so much faster. Have I ever played with C Sharp's Rider, the Rider IDE from the folks at JetBrains? I have. I like Visual Studio better. Can I explain Redux? Is there a Blazor analog? There are ways to provide state like that, but yeah. There are Blazor things. I'm not too familiar with Redux. Will Blazor have an application state handler? Why? I mean, we'll talk about application state next time but you don't really, you're going to see, you don't really need something built that's specific to go do those things. How can you explain WebAssembly to a JavaScript web dev? Advantage, disadvantage. You're running native code live in the browser. It runs significantly faster, and is able to take advantage of more of the processor because you're running native code. Disadvantage, takes a little bit more time to download all that code to run in the browser. But once it's there, it's just as fast, if not faster. Particularly when you're doing computationally intensive things. Is it me? Am I thinking, or Visual Studio 2022 JavaScript debugging is really slow? Don't know. When I'm doing JavaScript work, I typically use Visual Studio Code. So, haven't gotten too far into that. How you doing there, Trombone in the Netherlands? Big Mustache, can I tell some other channels I'd suggest for learning .NET stuff? Well, there's my channel. There's James Montemagno's channel. There's Scott Hanselman's channel. He doesn't teach so much .NET stuff, but goes into a bunch of other technologies. But those are the places that I would go. I would go to learn.microsoft.com. I would go to .net and click the Learn tab there. We're building out a bunch more content. TJ is Eclipsed. How you doing there in the Netherlands? Johan on Twitch. How long do I think Microsoft will provide support for Blazor? Asks Lee Samuel. There's the question. I was waiting to see how long it took. It took 37 minutes to get there. How long is Microsoft going to provide support for Blazor? Blazor is part of .NET 6. That means you're going to get at least 3 years support for Blazor. There are other companies, there are other technologies that have been discontinued and iterated on much more quickly than that. And folks will say, well, gosh, it's another one of these that is going to be discontinued and shipped along. No. No, that's not the case at all. So, is there a big difference between CS, HTML, and Razor files? Nope. And we're going to see that in a little bit here. Is this a series of Blazor or just a single video? This is going to be a series. How you doing there, One Punch Mac? Andy Walter, do I know why Blazor on WebAssembly is so slow? What do you mean it's slow? Give me some details. What's slow? I can show you a couple websites that you wouldn't know is Blazor on WebAssembly. So what's slow? Help me out. Any suggestions on dependency injection that does not use any reflection? That's kind of the point of dependency injection, is that it does use reflection to figure out, like, and even then, if you do dependency injection and you explicitly specify contracts from interface to concrete type, it doesn't use reflection when you do that. So, do I work on some of the Microsoft Learn stuff? Yes. The Microsoft Learn Blazor modules, I wrote all of those. Well, or contracted out and helped with some folks from another company put those together. How can you become an MVP? Go to mvp.microsoft.com, and you need to have either another MVP or a Microsoft employee nominate you there. PC Nerds' last 2 jobs have been using Blazor, and they love it. Terrific. Diddle Danny Lou would expect Microsoft to give it a minimum 10-year support now that it's publicly released. I can't say how long it's going to be supported. Honestly, we're looking and forecasting 5 years out, and it's still in our plans. We have no plans to change that going forward. Other technologies that were deprecated, that it wasn't us that deprecated it. It was those other things that we were integrating with cut off support for our technologies. Do I need to lock lists in Blazor if I have a component that removes itself from its parent component on dispose when the parent component... that is way specific. I can't answer that. I would need to see some code. How secure is the SignalR connection of Blazor Server? It's as secure as as you want to make it, because you can hook up and put authentication on it. Support lifecycle, and what's with the unhappy icon there? What about the support lifecycle? Can I develop a 3D DirectX app in Blazor WebAssembly? No. Blazor WebAssembly targets and delivers content that runs in the browser with Razor. If you want to build a DirectX app like that, use Unity and target the WebAssembly runtime directly. You're kind of mixing things there. Is there a new Blazor WebAssembly workshop on the horizon? It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. Blazor State builds on Mediator. Okay. Olamide James asks, can I create a base component class inheriting from component base, then make all my classes inherit? Yes, you can. I do that in another project I work on over on my Twitch channel. Yeah, diddle Danny Lou, right? Saris asks, what to tell people who are afraid to switch to Blazor, having in mind what happened to Silverlight? Please, what happened to Silverlight? I'd love to know. Because this is the fallacy that folks like to misunderstand. Let's not forget, Steve Jobs wrote the infamous memo about Flash will never run on our devices. No plugins will ever run on our web browsers on our devices. That killed Flash, Java applets, and Silverlight at that point. Steve Jobs did that, not Microsoft. Silverlight support was just discontinued in September, 4 months ago. 10 years after that memo. 10. So what was wrong with Silverlight? Investment into new features stopped because no other browser supported it except for Internet Explorer. Other browsers discontinued support for allowing plugin models like that. Blazor WebAssembly runs on top of .NET and HTML5 standard WebAssembly. Every browser supports it. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what device you're on. WebAssembly is there. And there are dozens of languages that build and compile to WebAssembly. So when folks say to it, gosh, it's so terrible, what happened to Silverlight? Well, what happened to Silverlight that was so terrible? It continued to get support for 10 years? Other vendors blocked the way that you could integrate and run it? Yeah, that is terrible that other vendors blocked it. That's not something Microsoft did. There's history there. It's well documented. And I welcome you to take a look. So, is there any roadmap or module for learning Blazor WebAssembly? Yes. Check out learn.microsoft.com. The content that's there works for both WebAssembly and server. You want to inject your dependencies in one class, but had to inject... Okay. You're placing bets on Blazor? Blazor is, we think, is going quite well and growing nicely. Can we explain the Blazor component hierarchy? Yeah, we'll get into that a bit. Share the project, please. Which project? How you doing there, Danny? 4811. Andy Walter used Silverlight, but love Blazor much better than Silverlight. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, we think it's a much better framework as well. Yeah, Java applets were certainly a thing. Plugins in browsers was, yeah, discontinued across the board. So, yep. Andy Walter, one major problem with Silverlight is it required XAML instead of HTML CSS. Sure, but I mean, is that a problem? If that's the markup language that you're familiar with, nothing wrong with that. Will browser WebAssembly access to browser APIs without JavaScript? That's up to the browsers. That's up to the browser vendors. Right now, the answer is no, not really. Let's see. How you do it? How does Blazor performance compare with other JavaScript frameworks? So when you get into computationally intense features, it's significantly faster. However, when you are just painting and moving objects around on screen, it's a little bit slower. Not significantly slower, not slower to the point where your non-technical family members would notice and go, "Oh my gosh, why is this so slow?" But technical folks would go, "What's going on there?" Because they'll notice just a little bit of speed bump. And we'll take a look at a couple websites that are built with Blazor WebAssembly, and you won't notice. Mr. Fings, that's way out of line. Carl wrote a debt collection application in Microsoft Access 2 in 1995. It's still being used to this day, fully upgraded. Wow. Wow. I mean, 25 to, 27 years on that? Much respect, Carl. Much respect. Please share the GitHub project you created as a base component class. No, I'm sorry, Olamide. I cannot do that. But we can definitely talk through, and I can get that demo into the content for these sessions. What's the difference between Razor and Blazor? Asks Ken, and Johan answers. Razor is a file format. Blazor is a user interface framework. Yep. Will we discuss server pre-rendering? I wasn't planning on getting to it today, but I will add that into the mix as we go along here. Let me make sure let me get some of these topics in here for later. Server pre-rendering Blazor content. There was a question about integrating Blazor content with MVC, other frameworks. I'll get those into future episodes, not today though. Can I replace? Will I cover Blazor app for mobile platform? Chinmay asks, not as part of this series, but I can definitely touch on it and hopefully show it a little bit, but I'm not going to make it a feature of this one because it's not RTM yet. How about inserting a 3D model in Blazor? No, not going to get into that, but could be done, yes. Is it good to use Blazor for e-commerce? Sure, you can do that. Absolutely. Blazor server side would be fantastic for e-commerce. Justin Bieber on Twitch wants to make a modern Windows application on modern technologies. We need to support Windows 7. That's not modern. You're talking about supporting an operating system that support was discontinued for 3-4 years ago. Would I recommend Maui or Blazor? I'd recommend Blazor in the browser. And you need to get off of Windows 7 now. Adam's on their second Blazor project. Awesome. And I'm going to move on here. We are at the end of the AMA time that I have allocated here, and we can get into this. Vertical Pact is scared to jump into Blazor. Some of their colleagues are scared to jump onto Blazor because of scaling performance. Where are they seeing scaling and performance numbers? So, sure, you can use WebRTC. What do I think about Knock Commerce? They've built a fantastic product. I don't use it, but I know the folks over there are putting in a lot of work to make it something that's going to work great for your applications. All right. Yeah, support modern CPM. Look at that. All right. Yeah, Vertical Pact. I'd like to hear more about where folks are saying, well, gosh, Blazor doesn't support. Yeah. You can screw up the scalability of any framework. That's right, Delano. Let's go! Hang on. Let's do that right. Let's go! We're going to get into this. Blazor DLLs can be decompiled. Can we secure them? No. Because they're shipped down to the browser. No. Anything that you ship to a client machine can be decompiled. Anything. That's just the nature of putting things on people's machines. They will decompile them. They will see what's in it. So we recommend, if you need to protect that, work on the server. How you doing there, jam.exe? All right. Love the Fritz bot emotes there. Thank you, Delano. Let's do this. Let me get things packed up here. We're gonna go over to the main desk. We're gonna get into our conversation about Blazor and building today. I create bookmarks throughout the video so that you can jump in the archive, jump right to the various topics, so that you can skip to the good part. YouTube. I am warning folks that are chatting on YouTube now. We've had a lot of problems with folks on YouTube, and I will moderate quickly and shut people down over there. Okay? So let's get into this. Got to change mics. Hello, there we go. Onto the other microphone, and let's do this. Let's head over to the other desk and get into the code. Here we go. Oops. I got caught over there. Ah, there we go. Hi there, friends. Now I'm over here now. And I've got code. And we've got markup. And it's all good. Beware the bots. Yes, on the YouTube, right? Is there any difference in core Razor and Blazor Razor pages? Yes, lots. Lethal error, we already talked about that. You can rewind and go back. That was one of the first questions that was asked. So, this is session 0301, introducing Blazor. Now, all the content, all the code for this session is available out on the GitHub website. Let me bring that up. If you go to github.com CSharpFritz, C# with CSharpFritz, and if you go into sessions, season 03, there it is, intro to Blazor. All the source code is here. I'm going to update it with anything that we add on, that we tune going on here today. And actually, some of this material I didn't push up the updates. Like, I'm going to be working in Visual Studio 2022 and .NET 6. So, you can go to that location, github.com, CSharpFritz, C# with CSharpFritz. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a link just below here that you can click through and get right into this repository. Sessions 03, this is 0301, intro to Blazor. Okay? Keeping an eye on chat over here. Any way to move the main screen out from behind? That's the whole gimmick here, is there it is, and I can point to things and explain it. That's the gimmick. What's this video all about? Really? Really? There's a description, EJ Music, just below. That's YouTubers being YouTube. Do I cover state management in Blaze? I didn't even get into starting introducing. So I'm not covering 25% of it. So I'm leaving the other side available here. Trust me. So we're going to be introducing and talking about Blazor here today. All right. The idea, what we're going through is why, how you can use this, and showing you some of the benefits, some of the things that happen with Blazor that make it interesting. And we're also going to talk about the different ways that you can build a web application with Blazor. And you've already heard some of the folks in chat talking about it, because you can build not just a web application that runs and renders content on the server, but it also runs and renders and delivers content, DLLs, native code that runs in the browser using a technology called WebAssembly. So when we talk about Blazor, you have those two options that you can build with today. Now, in the future, you've heard some folks talking about dotnet MAUI. In the future, dotnet MAUI, our native application framework that you can use, has the ability for you to inject Blazor applications inside of it so that it will host that application on a little internal web server, and it serves it with a local browser. Very similar to how many Electron types of applications are built and work today. So those are some of the ways you're going to be able to use this technology once you get that initial base and how you work with it. Okay? So before I get into, there's information here about other folks that are using Blazor. There's links out to customer stories on the Microsoft website that you can check out. But I want to get in and get started, and I want to build an application and show you what the templates look like. In fact, I'm going to jump out of that, and I want to show you, I'm going to use Firefox here. Why Firefox? Because Edge and Chrome both use that Chromium browser framework. So whatever works in Firefox is going to work in those browsers also. But we can also look in those browsers as well. I want to take you to a website that I wrote that is built and uses Blazor WebAssembly. And this is hats.csharpfritz.com. And there it is. It's loading my data from the server. There we go. I have a few hats. You might have noticed I wear baseball hats a lot. If you head out to hats.csharpfritz.com, this is a Blazor application. It's got a little bit of CSS to do the rotate and show you a little information about each one of the hats that I have here. And there's a little search feature up here, so I can do a search, right? So I can search for, let's say, my Blazor hat. There's my Blazor hat. I've also got, for the Baton Rouge user group, I received a hat generously from them after I gave a presentation to them about Blazor. The source code for this is on GitHub if you want to go take a look and see how this is built. But this is all running on Azure, and it runs on what's called a static web application. Just like JavaScript applications that you may have built with Angular, Vue, React, or choose your favorite JavaScript framework, you can deploy and run those applications on a static web server that doesn't have any content that is interpreted or built on the server, right? Same thing with Blazor. Because Blazor with WebAssembly allows you to build and compile your code and ship all of that code down to run in the browser, there's no moving parts on the server that are needed when you choose Blazor WebAssembly. So when we look at this application, this is all running in the browser. This is all, if I refresh, this is all code that has been delivered and is running on this machine, not in the cloud. Okay? Now, there is a database out there in the cloud. There is a front-end API that knows how to query and get data from that database to show me the various hats and to provide that search feature. But it's, for my web server, completely free for me to build and deploy. I don't need to think about having too many folks connecting and interacting with my server because it's all built and running on this machine here in front of me. Let me take a look at chat. Let me catch up here and we'll go through this. Cool. All right. So this, yes, War2R, this, because all the code is running on this machine, could be a single page application. It effectively is. And you could then add those appropriate files and blocks of code to make it into a progressive web application so that it presents and saves content into the browser, and it just goes back to get that data. And we can cache some of that data here locally for presentation and interacting with. Thindal asks, how would you try to lock down your Azure functions so they can only be called from your static web apps? So this is the same problem that folks in the Node community have. It's kind of hard to do because you're going to pass a key around, and you're actually going to expose an API key inside your app that folks are allowed to use to access that. So you could generate some limited time use API keys that would connect in and be allowed to work with those functions. It's a little bit tricky to do right now, but it's not something that I've had much success with, trying to figure out how to completely lock it down so only my application can interact with it. Even compiling and putting those API keys into a deployed application, a mobile application, is still going to get decompiled, and folks are going to find those keys and be able to interact with your application. So how do we do that? You can allow login, and once somebody's logged in, constrain their interactions with the rest of the APIs. That's going to be one way to do that. So I do have CORS constraints turned on so that when you're working in browsers, only my application can pull back that data, but CORS can be worked around. So there's ways to work around that. Let me see here. What do I think about the future of Blazor? Already talked about that. Sorry. You can go back and rewind and take a look. Any ideas on when there will be hot reload for Blazor Hybrid in WPF? Asks Christoph. I would recommend connecting with my colleague Dimitri Lialin. Blazor Hybrid applications are an interesting bag. I do not know what the schedule is for that. Once a user makes a request to the server, send the WebAssembly for Blazor. Yes, it does do that. Good for database application CRUD. We're doing that here. Sliding expiration keys is a standard way of doing it. I wouldn't say it's a standard, but it's going to be a way to limit exposure. Are we going to cover authentication and authorization in the near future? Probably a few weeks out. It's not in the short term. Time-based tokens, even if you use JWT, well, JWT after you're authenticated will help with that. Yes, right? Passing JWT around. Are there plans to add PWA support for Blazor Server? No, and that will never work because and I will show you how Blazor Server works here. Blazor Server requires a constant connection to the client. You will never have PWA support for Blazor Server. It's two different things. PWA means everything runs locally and offline. Blazor Server means everything runs in a very heavily connected environment with the server. The web server in your machine means IIS or Kestrel. TG, off topic. Sorry. Okay. So this is running out on Azure, and this is all WebAssembly. If we take a look at how this is deployed and running, I'm going to open up my developer tools here. You will see, if I go to application, I went to the wrong one. Storage. Yeah, there it is. So cookies, I don't care about cookies. Cache storage, and there are Blazor resources. And you can see when you look in here, right? Can we pop this out? Separate window. Thank you. Really? That's not right. That should be whatever. But you can see it shipped down. Look at all these DLLs that it shipped down, and they're in the browser, right? This is what I mean by WebAssembly. We're sending down. Look, system text JSON is running in the browser. So these DLLs that we're used to seeing running with .NET on an operating system like Windows, Mac, or Linux, they're not running on an operating system. They're running in the browser on top of WebAssembly. And they get cached aggressively inside this cache storage. So what's that mean? Each time you refresh the page, let me go back to network over here, and I'll show you all of the requests. Each time you refresh the page, it doesn't load that .NET content. It only transferred, in this case, if I take the images out of there, right? So if I go down to just, right, these couple of items, right, it was only about 100, 200K because all of the application content is cached in the browser, okay? I wish I could just pull out so it was just, right, right, couple bytes, right, Bootstrap is in there at 150K. If I turn on everything except take the XHR, yeah, that's fine. 99K, right? Because the application is downloaded and running in the browser. So, and that's with cache disabled. Now, right to the question of, well, gosh, how much is that it's actually downloading? Let me go over here and I'm actually going to delete this. And we will, what did I just close? We'll find out in just a minute. I will reload this. Right? So it's downloading that entire .NET application, and you can see it. See all the DLLs coming in here. Look at them. Okay? So that it can run a Blazor application. But these are much, much smaller, right? SystemNet HTTP JSON, it's 9K, right? System DLL, 200K, right? And the total size transferred is about 2.5 meg. And that included, right, all of the things to bootstrap and get that running. But, and this is actually running on an older version. This is running on the first version of Blazor with .NET Framework, .NET Core 3.1. So now I don't load all that content. So WebAssembly downloads everything and runs in the browser, and you saw it added about another, in this case, another 2.5 meg to be downloaded. I tried explaining that the user wouldn't be able to shop while offline. What do you mean you can't shop while offline? Of course you can't shop while offline. If you're not connected to a web application, if you're not connected to the server, how are you going to submit the order? How are you going to submit the order? So we're going to get into building a Blazor application in just a minute here. So when can we expect multi-threading support in Blazor WebAssembly? When the browsers support multi-threading in WebAssembly. Can I talk about IndexedDB? No, off topic. Are the bots coming back? One of the problems you had with Blazor was that they blocked the DLL download. Really? They're blocking specific content in the browser? Will Blazor Server replace MVC and Razor pages? No. Can you use a dashboard on WebAssembly and cite on server side on server side in same application? I don't know your dashboard and WebAssembly. Sounds doable, but I can't say positively without seeing your code. How traditional SPA created by JavaScript framework pulls data? Yeah, it makes HTTP fetch requests. Can you change where the framework location where it originates? Something about that your security prevents? That's weird. Drop me a line on Twitter about that, Sean. That's weird. I think there's a way to do that, but there's something else going on there with your security, folks. Why would Blazor not replace Razor pages since it is much better? We're all about giving options. giving folks choice of what they want to build and how they want to build. Firewall block that content type. Okay. Do they also block JavaScript? They're blocking application octet type. That's interesting. That's interesting. In which case, you can redeploy and run on Blazor Server, and we're going to see more about that right now. So that was Blazor WebAssembly. We can also build and run on the server. So let's start writing some code. Let's start writing some code here. I'm just going to create a folder here called My App. There it is. And let's go into there. And I'm going to create a Blazor Server application. So, yeah, let me create a Blazor Server application. Yeah, I was right. Blazor Server. And let's call this My Server App. All right. So I'm creating it here at the command line. You can do the exact same things inside Visual Studio 2022 to build and use these templates. But I'm doing it here at the command line because it works the same whether you're on Windows, Mac, or Linux, building and working with these application templates. So I'm going to go into My Server App. Let's open this in Visual Studio Code and take a look. Yeah, that had to be a corporate firewall. You're right, Johan. Is there a way to trigger a method in a child component when an incoming parameter... Too far off topic. Sorry, I'm not going to answer your specific question right now. You said the Brotli version and it worked. Awesome. Why choose Blazor Server over Blazor WebAssembly? We're getting there. Yeah, application octet stream is a common fallback. So they're blocking a lot of stuff. Do I think for mobile sites, do I think it's best to build with WebAssembly rather than Blazor Server? Yes and no. You're going to get that progressive web app capability, but you're also creating a large download. So let me close some of these. Let's start off looking at program over here. So Blazor Server takes that same concept of building with components and building a user interface and moves everything over to the server. So it renders just like MVC, just like Razor Pages, just like other frameworks and tools that you would use, PHP, that render content on the server. So we set up and host a server using code like this that looks like some of the ways that we do it in ASP.NET Core. So we have a web application that we're defining, and we add some capabilities to it. We add the ability to serve Razor Pages. We add the ability to serve server-side Blazor. And we're going to define, for dependency injection purposes, a service called the Weather Forecast Service. This is a demo bit of code here. And then we're going to define that pipeline. What are all the things that we have to go through in order to render and work with that code? So we're going to set up some development configuration here. HTTPS redirection is very important, so we put that in the template by default. We're going to support static files, routing between our various pages and components. We're going to set up a Blazor hub here. More about that in a minute. And we're going to serve from this location a fallback page called host_host. And if we take a look at the content of our application, you will see there is a page here called host_host. And this is a Razor page that defines and starts the Blazor Server application. It answers on the root of my website. Say it says @page/. That says we're answering on the root of the website. It is in my Server app pages, and we're going to make some tag helpers available. You don't really need to know about what those are right now, but it's going to make some tag helpers, particularly this component tag, available so that it can render my Blazor Server application, and it's going to pre-render content on the server. Now there is a layout at play here, and the layout Now this looks like HTML that I'm used to seeing. This is HTML mixed with a little bit of .NET. That other file didn't look like HTML. This is HTML, right? We've clearly got an HTML tag here. We've clearly got a head here, and there's a couple extra things. We know what base is. There's this component thing again. That's another one of those tag helpers, right? There's that tag helpers reference here, and it's rendering and saying we're going to put a head outlet here. And down here, we have this render body thing. We've got a div and environment. I don't know what environment is yet, but there's an environment tag and a reload button and a little dismiss X button there, and a little bit of JavaScript right here. These couple pages are the pages that frame, bootstrap, and run the Blazor Server application. And they all run on the server. Let's actually run this application and take a look at what's under the covers here. Well, take a look at it, and then we'll peel back the covers a little bit and see how some of the code inside of this works together. So I execute .NET run here at the command line, and I'm going to control click, and that's going to open in my favorite browser, Firefox, right here. Let's zoom out a little bit. And we get hello world. Okay. So I've got a web application that runs here, and it's running on the server. So we saw with that Blazor WebAssembly app at hats.csharpfritz.com, you can go there in whatever browser, whatever operating system, whatever device you're on, and you can see that application. And it downloads those DLLs to run in your browser. In this case, it doesn't download DLLs. It only sends the user interface. It doesn't even send the logic to interact with the user interface. Let me explain. If we take a look at what was sent down to run this application, I'll reload here. That's it. CSS, JavaScript, more CSS, fonts, some initializer, JSON code, and some stuff for debugging here, this negotiate. And it actually sets up WebSockets. And it's sending messages back and forth using WebSockets when you interact with the application. Okay. I didn't see any of this stuff when we were looking at the code, but the WebSockets are out here. And we can actually look at the messages. Where are they? Right. Yeah, there they are. And we can see that it's sending down content to the browser that's being painted on the screen. So let me clear this. If I click on one of these other links, it sent a bunch of messages back and forth. Begin invoke.net from JavaScript. Something happened. And it sends messages back to the browser. Render batch, render, render, render. And look at this. This looks like there's some HTML and CSS classes being painted and sent through. On render completed, the browser sends back. So the server says, we'll end invoke, and all this stuff happens. Now, I'm showing you this not because you need to program these things, but I'm showing you this so that you know this is how it's communicating back and forth. And all of that content that went back and forth is 2.5K to present and provide that interaction with the browser. And I can interact with my content here, and it's reaching back to the server to send, hey, this thing happened in the user interface, send me some more web page content to paint because this thing happened. And this is why Blazor server side requires a constant connection to the server, because there is no logic running in the browser. All that's running in here is paint this HTML on screen with this CSS. Boom, done. That's it. After that, all the logic is still on the server. So, to the question of why would you choose WebAssembly versus Blazor Server, I have a much smaller footprint what I'm delivering into the browser. Okay? I'm protecting my intellectual property because none of my code, zero of my .NET business logic code, is sent into the browser. It all stays on the server. I get to scale my application by adding more web servers. Okay? And I have this tight connection to the server that's required, which then, incidentally, creates a security requirement that folks must be connected to the server in order to interact with this application. Very different, two different ways to think about and build your applications. Let me take a look at chat and get caught up here while I have this sitting on screen. In fact, you can see when I click here and it increments the counter, it's passing, right? It's passing that information back and forth, and you can see exactly where the mouse click happened. And it sends back, we'll render this information, and you can see, where's that number? There's the 8 that it rendered on screen. Is it the 8 or the 2? No. That was probably the 2. But it's all encoded and encrypted. Not encrypted, but encoded here and compressed to make sure it sends a very small package back and forth. Let me catch up on chat now. How you doing, Space Shot? Andy asks, is it true that WebAssembly is the only option if it's running on a device that usually has no internet access? Yes, that would be, I would agree with that statement, Andy. Yep. So why don't you enable PWA on every Blazor WebAssembly project? Is there any disadvantage? There are. When you do enable progressive web apps on a Blazor WebAssembly project, the storage and the storage of that content, right, shifts slightly. It also means that all of the requirements to brand the application need to be met and delivered. So it's a couple of additional things that not everybody wants. It also means that you can have some interesting, funny things happen with caching of that content. And I've seen that on the one major application that I've been building that is a PWA. Stuff that you need to get ironed out before you take the jump into running it as a PWA. But I can kind of agree with you, Ben Burr. There is a point where it does make sense to just say every Blazor WebAssembly app is a progressive web app. What was the code for creating the app in the terminal? Asks Big Mustache. So from the terminal, I was able to create a new .NET application with Blazor Server. I'm just going to do it right here. .NET new Blazor Server, my first app. Something like that. And that will run it, and running that command will generate from the default Blazor Server template the structure of that application and put it into a folder called My First App. -O says the output folder is My First App, and you'll be able to find it in that folder and work there. So just like over here, I'm in My Server App, and I'm running the application by executing .NET run. Let me catch up on some more. Can I run Blazor WebAssembly in Blazor Server in one ASP.NET Core app? No. What you can do is you can run Blazor WebAssembly and pre-render content on the server using ASP.NET Core. So it's not necessarily Blazor Server, but it's pre-rendered, so you get a little bit more speed boost on it. Dukasoft asks, when browsing Razor pages in a Blazor project, is the constant connection still required? No, it is not. But your hang on. It's not required if those pages are in a PWA model stored offline. However, those Razor pages need to be rendered on the server. So, all right. Why is the base tag needed? Asks Diaco. Let Let me show that back over here. The base tag is needed so that the Blazor server knows, has a location to reference and say, well, coming after that page, anything else that's requested, route it through the Blazor engine so that it knows where that routing table of where it starts, right? So we need to be able to have a pointer to say anything after that location, right? That location right there. We're going to take that and push it into the routing table so that it knows how to take a web address and turn it into a request for code to be executed. And we're going to see some of those pages here in just a minute. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate the kind words. Thank you, Chris, for jumping in there. Yep, it's the prefix to attach to your href links. Can you run? How can you run Blazor Server on Linux? Just like that. You can also take a Blazor application, put it into a Docker container, deploy and run it that way as well. The Kestrel web server that you get when you execute .NET Run works on Linux as well. Works on Mac too. So, for instance, if you deploy a Blazor WebAssembly on GitHub Pages, the base href needs to be updated. Yes, it does. You're right. You're right, John. Ehsan asks, should I start with MVC, Razor, or Blazor if I already know some C# and HTML, CSS? That's why I'm taking a dive right into Blazor. Let's jump right into the deep end and go into Blazor. Let me see here. Yeah, I'm not going to get into Linux today, but everything that I'm executing does work on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Thank you, Chris, for jumping in and helping with answering some questions on YouTube. Let's see here. Is there a general API to capture these events that go over the WebSocket? So the API that's being used to transmit this back and forth, this is using SignalR. For the most part, you shouldn't be going in there and tinkering and interacting with it. I don't know if there is a logging. There is a connection configuration that you can pass in there. I haven't used that, but you can go in and set some connection dispatcher options in here, some configuration options. I haven't used those. I haven't needed to, because that communication back and forth is typically handled for you very gracefully and effectively. Oh, thank you. I am programming XD. Glad you're enjoying it. How I send a device provided value like current location back to the server. We'll see that in a bit. How can I make pre-render not render twice? I need to see some more information about what you're seeing there, Jason. Well, hang on. Pre-rendering can work if you are using it with JavaScript interop. There are ways to make that work. How do I deal with external request errors? Like if the weather forecast call fails, how do you propagate that to the end user? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We can take a look at that. Blazor SignalR connections, how do they scale in Blazor Server? So you can stand up additional a backplane using SignalR service, and there's a couple other tools that you can use to stand up a backplane so that this is managed across multiple servers. You're going to need to store and manage the state of your application across those somewhere else behind those servers in a database, somewhere like that. But we recommend folks, as much as possible, use sticky sessions so that they can work with it. Off topic, Mohammed. Sorry. Not going to talk about MVC and PWAs right now. might be useful to capture mouse events and make a heat map of clicks. Would that be against GDPR? Not against GDPR if you declare it in your privacy policy as one of those items. And it's not PII. It's not personally identifiable information, what folks are doing when they interact with the application. When when somebody logs in and they start keying in and sharing information, you then need to declare, oh, okay, I'm not sending this out. But if you're just capturing a mouse clicked here, if you're just capturing that information, that's not personally identifiable information. However, I am not the end-all authority on PII and GDPR. Consult your legal counsel appropriately. How do you use Blazor pages without HTML? You don't. This is delivering HTML. What should be open source? Which UI framework is good to go with Blazor? Blazor is a UI framework. Folks use a bunch of different component frameworks to work with that, and they also use, you'll see folks using Blazor and other CSS frameworks to work with it as well. Do I use PA? Oh, question for somebody else. Fantastic. All right, moving on. So this is how it's set up. Well, let's look at that counter page. Nah, let's not even look at that. Let's look at the index page that was rendered here. This, hello world, right here. Let's talk about that for a second. So that's coming out of, in this pages folder, there is index. And I have, this looks like HTML. This looks like the content that is being delivered on this page. I've got hello world, welcome to your new app, and I've got this thing here, well, hello world, welcome to your new app. That's HTML. I'm used to working with that. I know how to do that. What's this and what's this? And we also see that page indicator up at the top, right? This indicates that this file, this index.razor file, should answer and behave as a page, and it should respond when you navigate to the root of the application, /. Page title here is a new component that we introduced. It ships as part of .NET 6 and Blazor that allows you to specify the title of the page that's being presented and worked on. So I can change this to Foo Magoo, and if I go back over to my application, well, it still says index. Because I haven't restarted the application. When you're building and working with Blazor, whether it's Blazor WebAssembly or Blazor Server, you can turn on and use hot reload if you type the command properly, .NET Watch. That works on Windows, Mac, or Linux. Or there's a tool that you can use to connect and use hot reload inside Visual Studio 2022. And now we see my index page here is called Foo Magoo. And I can change that on the fly over here, and it will be updated. Fritz's first application. I save, and it updates Fritz's first application. Okay, big deal. But you can update that page title using this page title element right here. And that kind of makes sense. It's just like using the title tag at the top of an HTML page. This just fills it in for you. But what is this? Survey prompt. I don't know what survey prompt is. Where's this coming from? That it looks like a tag, but that's clearly not an HTML tag. Survey prompt is a Blazor component. So if I drop down into the shared folder here, I have a file, surveyprompt.razor. Now, that survey prompt is this. And there's our first big concept to cross here. When you name a file in a Blazor application, something.razor, okay, that something can be used as a tag inside of another .razor file. So this is a component. It's got some HTML and C# in there, written using Razor markup, and can be referenced like this. So let's pop into survey prompt razor. And we see inside of this, look at this. I've got divs. I've got a strong tag, spans. The web developer in me loves to see this. But we still got some other C# things going on here. In particular, there's this title. See that? And in Razor, we can pivot from outputting HTML to outputting and giving C# code to execute by prefixing it with the @ symbol there. So @title, this is a C# command that says grab the title variable and output its content right here between the strong tags. So how is Blazor working for you? If I go back to my index page, there's my title right there. How is Blazor working for you? It's being set to that title, and title is being output right there. And there's that variable being declared right here, title. Now, it looks like a C# property. We learned all about properties and classes and all those things in our previous series. So here's a property. Now, it's living inside of a Razor page, inside of a Razor file, and Blazor knows that this is a property that I can work with because it's wrapped in this code block. So just like in other JavaScript technologies, thinking specifically about React, where you have JSX files that mix JavaScript and markup, we can do the same thing here. We've got our markup, and we've got a little bit of C# down here that's inside this code fence that has this property defined. And this property for title is exposed as a parameter using this parameter attribute on top of it. With this, that means that I can now access and set the title here in my index page and pass that in as though it were an attribute on that HTML tag. Big concepts that we're crossing there. We're creating attributes on components by just adding that parameter attribute on top of a property. Now, it has to be a public property because you're accessing it from outside this component. But I can now change and pass that in. If I remove that parameter tag, right, I just commented that out. I'm going to go over here and you're going to see, it's errored out, right? I've got this huge stack trace here, and it says object of type survey prompt. Say survey prompt has a property matching the name title, but it does not have the parameter or cascading parameter attribute applied. So it's clearly picked up and said, this isn't a thing that you can set. And if I put that back on, this is going to rebuild, redeploy, and the website works. So I can change up that title that's being passed in and rendered there by changing this. Okay. Save that. And it updates immediately because of this hot reload feature we have built into Blazor. And it works for WebAssembly, and it works for Blazor Server. And the code for Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly inside the .razor files is exactly the same and works exactly the same way, whether it's running in the browser with Blazor WebAssembly or it's running on the server with Blazor Server side. So let's take a look at the next file here, this counter. So if I go back over here and I mouse over the counter, you see down there, it's going to /counter is where this navigation element is going. And if we take a look at the counter file, it has, once again, that page indicator. I'm listening on the /counter page. And I've got a page title, and I've got an H1, and this current count right here. Right, current count, and it's got 0 for @CurrentCount. And there's @CurrentCount. It's defined as a field here, and that is where it's being output. Let me take a look at chat before I get into this button here. And what the heck is this? This on click. Let me catch up with chat. I see a couple messages came in. What's the best way to log errors in Blazor WebAssembly? Off topic. Sorry. Not going to go into that, Olamide. But you're going to want to send messages back to the server, and there's a bunch of different tools and frameworks you can use to deliver that. When I use Blazor Server, I experienced that my views are rendered twice when I set render mode to server pre-rendered. Something else is going on there. You've added something else into the flow there that it's rendering twice. It shouldn't happen. Is the setting for authorization and authentication the same like in the .NET Core project? No, it is not. You're going to set it up the same on the server, but how you transfer it and get it into the WebAssembly application is different. Let me see here. Would I recommend making partial classes for every component? No, not necessarily. You use the page title component to change the title. What about meta tags? Yes, you can do that. Shoot, I'm blanking on that feature real quick. It is, and that is where I'm. 1 second. I know this. No, it's in index. No, host. That's what I'm thinking. Nope, I was wrong. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there it is. This here, the head outlet, right? Head outlet, Blazor, site, docs, Microsoft com. Yep. Yep, head outlet component, and it is, oh, come on. There's another way you can output information into it. Yeah, head content components, that's what I'm thinking. So now, where is it? Come on now. Blazor head content. And I'm on the same page again, aren't I? Nope, there it is. So we can add meta information using head content. So let me go back over here. Wrong one. Still in the wrong one. So if I go into index, head content, meta, name equals description. Is it value? Is that what I'm thinking? Content. Fritz's first web page. Right? So that will re-render, and see, it provides information here about where it's going to land. But if I F12 into it, and we inspect, we take a look at the head, there's a meta tag with that description on the page. So head content is how you add that information. It's been a while since I used it, so I had to look it up. So it's one of those things that you kind of set it and forget it. There's my head content for these pages. Go. And you're done at that point. All right. Can I use HTML code generated by some HTML design tool? Sure, why not? As somebody who uses Vue, this seems very familiar to jam.exe. Cool, glad to hear it. Let's see. Andy recommends creating partial classes for all components. To each their own. I'm a believer in measuring how much do I have to scroll. This is one page of content. I don't have any C# code that executes with this. So I would not create code that lives behind this. When we talk about the counter component that we're going to work with here, this is starting to get a little bit more than I'm comfortable with. It's still, and to be fair, I'm zoomed in a little bit here. I typically run at about this size of font, and I measure whether I want to separate things from one file of markdown and code or two files, one that is markdown and one that is code. If I have to scroll more than once to see all of the content, if I have to hit page down a second time to see more content, that's when I start moving things over, if I have C# content, into a partial class, and we'll see more about that next time. Are these Fritz streams regularly scheduled? Yes, every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. What is it? 1300 UTC right now? But it's mostly a personal preference. You're right, John. Do I use partial classes or inheritance? Why not both? Because you can. Partial classes are going to be the way to go, though. But you can also drop inheritance in there so you reuse stuff. And there are reasons to create base classes as well for that. I do that inside one of my applications so that I can provide access to my localization tools and have that just available on every component. A universal component base. Yeah, why not? Sure. Access to user information and stuff like that I'm going to reuse on every page. Is there a great resource to show Razor page developers a transition to Blazor? How you doing there, Perry at Digital Ox? No, but that's a good idea. The Razor page developer to Blazor transition. That's a good idea. How do you share data between components? We'll talk about that more next time as we get into that. All right. So I have this component here, and it has a button. That's an HTML button, and it has an on-click here. And I'm used to seeing on-click, and that meaning, hey, here's a JavaScript handler that's going to fire when this button is clicked, and it has click me in here. So, but this isn't the same JavaScript on-click. This is a .NET on-click. This is saying when the button is clicked, run this .NET code called increment count. Run that method, and you see that method down here, and of course, it's the very simple, just take that current count and increment it. Just +1 to it. And current count is here, so that gets incremented, and this updates. And because there's an event on page that triggers this, and it updates that, at the end of this, when that increment is completed and we hit that final curly brace down there, it's going to see what values were updated on our page. And if there was anything, any user interface part that was bound to that, like right here, it's going to repaint, it's going to reevaluate that statement and place that value there. So when I go to counter and I click this, it updates and repaints that value. Okay. Let's take that and do a couple things with this. First off, this counter component is a page answering at counter, but it's also a component. Not only does it have to live right here, but I can pick that up and put it into another file. Like over here, beneath that survey prompt, I can add that counter component by saying that. And Visual Studio Code takes away that red underline and says, oh yeah, I know what that is. That's the counter component that lives in counter.razor, and it's going to let me emit that counter component right underneath the survey prompt. So if I go back to the home page, there it is. So now I've taken one page and embedded it in another. And that event still works because events inside of a component stay within the scope of that component. So that button click just works. What if I want to pass in and change the behavior of that? If I want to pass in some increment value, right? Instead of just +1 here, I can, just like we saw with the survey prompt, I can add a parameter to this. So let's add a parameter here called increment by, and this is a demo that I give a lot. So you may have seen me give this once or twice, and I will define this is a parameter by adding that parameter attribute, and it defaults to 1. So now down here in increment count, I'm not going to make this plus plus, I'm going to make this plus equals increment by. Now it's a parameter, defaults to 1, and if I go over here, I can click. Did I? Come on now. Hot reload succeeded, yeah? It's not working. There it goes. Now I can change that behavior by introducing that increment by on my index page, right? Increment by equals, and let's make that 5. And now when I click, it increments by 5s. It didn't reload the page. It just patched and made that available using hot reload behind the scenes. So we've got this ability to specify attributes that we can pass in, right? We can take our components and make them a little more sophisticated and pass in data and apply those and work in interesting ways. I can also specify that that increment by is required. Let me show you. There is a new feature called Editor Required that you can decorate this with, and that says this value must be specified when it's running as a component. So if I remove that and save, look at that, I've already got a yellow underline. It's a warning. It's not a compiler error. This expects a value for this parameter. And if I go over to my code over here and we force it to rebuild, I did a Control R to force a rebuild, I get a compiler error. Compiler warning, I'm sorry. I get a compiler warning. Warning, counter expects a value for increment by, but it has not been provided. And if we go over here, it still works because it has a default value, but I've thrown a warning here, and then I indent again. That means you can configure your application to fail builds on any kind of warning. That's a configuration option available to you at the project level, but you can block that from and specify that that's a warning that stops the build, stops your application from shipping. Let me take a look and catch up with some of the comments here, and then I need to... there was a question about getting data. I'll show you how we fetch data with the HTTP client, and then we'll wrap up. Cascading parameters can be a good option. We'll talk about them next time as we talk about state and components next time. By using interfaces and injecting. Yep, that's more about state next time. Hey there, Kay. Sometimes you see at onClick blah blah, but sometimes I see at onClick equals at onClick equals at blah blah blah. What is the difference? Sometimes you have to help Blazor to know. Let me set that to 5. You have to help it know where to find some of that content. So here, right, I had increment count. Let me just put a carriage return there so you can see it. Right? Yeah. Sometimes you'll see folks put an at there just to kind of force that this is this is a C# thing for that. And if I stop and refresh, it still works, right? No errors over here. So, there was a former syntax of Blazor that was very much what you were describing. OnClick equals at whatever. But the syntax that is fully supported is at onClick up front to define this is the handler, the dotnet handler that we're implementing, and because that's a dotnet handler, this is assumed to be a dotnet method. I want to use some control like drag and drop. Is it possible to do this with Blazor? Yes, and folks have built some components that do that right now. Can I stop that and tell when should re-render? We'll get into more event rendering next time. Components all the way down, exactly, Conficient. Yeah. Can I discuss two-way data binding? We will discuss that next time. Absolutely. Two-way data binding. is a way for you to put in, right? I can put, heck, let's just show it right now. Let's call this input, short type equals text, at bind equals increment, come on, increment by. I think I need to put an at in front of that. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So now if I go back over here, right? Yes, I know we need to restart the app. Do it. How we doing? We got about 5 minutes to go here. Rebuilding. So now I have a combo box here. That's the increment by. I can change that, and that's the new increment by, because it's two-way data binding. The value was passed in from my page. I changed the value. I typed it in here, and it reset the value, which now makes it work the way that I want it to. So I'm doing a little bit of two-way data binding there, because I'm binding to the text box. So I don't even need to read anything out of that text box. The value of that text box using this bind, and we'll talk more about this next time, is dropped into this field automatically for us. What's the hot reload command? .net watch will get you there. Yeah, TG, thank you so much for that. Oh, look at the bots on YouTube. Yeah, amazing how fast time flies. All right, friends, we are just about out of time. I'm going to wrap things up. There's lots more to talk about with Blazor. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I did want to show you real quick how you fetch data. So fetch data here gets this weather forecast and presents it on screen. This is using Blazor server side, so it's actually getting that down here using a forecast service, and we saw that get injected. When you're working on Blazor WebAssembly, you're going to connect up with an HTTP client and pass that information in. So if we go into the source code here, I believe, yep, first WebAssembly, we look at the page for this, fetch data, here we go. This time, those of you that are familiar with Razor, you'll know that you can inject services. So I'm injecting, I want a type of HTTP client, and I'm going to assign it to this variable HTTP. And down here, you see the code is exactly the same to format the forecasts. It says HTTP, get from JSON asynchronously this type of data, and it's going to go get this file from the server. So you can use that to go get any API in some specified format, weather forecast objects, and put it into, in this case, the forecast variable that's up here, and this just does a for each across those to output the data, and we get that appearing in this little table. And folks have made grid components, data repeater components that make that a little bit easier to do. All right. What do I like most about Blazor? The components and how I can reuse so much with it so easily and with C#. Really great stuff. .NET Watch is the new version of .NET Watch Run. Starting with .NET 6, you'll use .NET Watch. You don't need to specify Run. Will we be able to see this live later? Well, I won't be here live later, but it'll be recorded. You can watch it. Yes. Can we use some model entities for input validation like a Razor page? Yes, you absolutely can, Tomas. But that's all the time for me today. That is it. That was quick. Oh my gosh. We went through that so fast. Whew. How does Blazor WebAssembly work? You need to rewind. And the underneath the cover things you're going to have to take a look at another time. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Really appreciate you joining me. This was the first of probably a 6-part series about Blazor. We just hit the tip of the iceberg here. We're going to get into components next time. We're going to talk a little bit about application state, and we're gonna have a good time learning more about that. Check out the GitHub repository, github.com/CSharpFritz/C# with CSharpFritz. You'll find it out there. All the samples are there. We're going to go through and cover a ton of content. I'm redoing the samples for this series so that for this segment on Blazor, so that we have a consistent application that we build throughout the entire time and we deploy and have some fun with that. All right, taking a look here, scrolling down. Thank you so much. That did go fast. That did go very fast. Hello to you, Travis in Belize. Appreciate the kind words. I'll be back tomorrow over on my channel, twitch.tv/CSharpFritz. We're building a very large Blazor application over there called KlipTok, KlipTok.com, that helps folks discover Twitch videos. I encourage you to stop by if you want to talk more. AMA is on the whole time that we're over there, and it's the same time tomorrow that we'll be there. Happy to answer your questions and have a good time. All right. Let me see. For those of you watching on YouTube, hope you have a great rest of your day. Check out the rest of the video here on the Learn C# with CSharpFritz playlist. There's great content from the on.net team. We've got some other shows coming up live later today. Hope you tune in and stick around for those. Same thing for folks on Twitch. Now, if you're watching on Twitch, let's go find who else is streaming on the big Twitch TV network that we can get you rated into so you have a good time watching another stream. Gosh, speaking of my favorite components, they're streaming right now, and they're talking about the new release of their components, the new version. Let me get you connected with them. This is the Code It Live channel from Progress Software. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you spending some time with me. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow on the CSharpFritz channel. Take care.